Hi, Guy.
Hello, Gary. Although it seems odd saying hello, Gary this time, since we are actually in the same room for the first time since before lockdown.
Wow, that's true.
I mean, to do the podcast, not actually in the same room for the first time.
And also to say hi, because I've just been on a bus with you for the most of the day, travelling down from Liverpool.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, I mean, frankly, I'm sick of the sight of you already. I mean, quite a I'm saying hello. I'd rather be saying goodbye. No, that's not true. That's a terrible thing to say, especially so early in the tour.
This is Rockonteurs on the road. So
it's the Rockonteurs Road Show.
That's it. We're trying to bring you Rockonteurs, even though Guy and I are out on the road with Nick Mason's Saucerful of Secrets, as you probably know. And we are now. Where are we?
We're in Oxford at the New Theatre, Oxford.
Which isn't that new, is it?
It's really not new. If there was a word I was going to use to describe this theatre, new would be very near the bottom of the pile.
Probably been new in 1920.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful, and we've got a show tonight, and what we thought we'd do, this is pretty obvious, is we grabbed the nearest musician sitting next to us, which happened to be Nick Mason.
Exactly, happens to be, which is amazing because he's the boss, and he doesn't have to. You know what I mean?
No. So this is a part two. But you know, I thought I don't know what you think, but I thought we might have a look at sort of like life on the road.
Life on the road, yeah, and this tour, and you know, I mean, it's very early on. We should point out it's only our fourth gig tonight.
Yeah. But I might be interviewing you in this because you had all those experiences.
Under
with Pink
caution.
Floyd. Could you sign this, please, sir? Yeah. Welcome to the Rockonteurs.
Okay, guys, I'm ready.
That's a big tune for sure. I actually wrote that originally for Tina Turner.
Of course, I had gone and found Joni Mitchell down in Florida and brought her back.
I've listened to a few of them and they've been really good, man. I'm sitting in the back of the car coming into London. They're brilliant.
Thank you guys for still being around, still making music, still being into it, and doing this podcast. It's fabulous.
So great to talk to two guys that have done this.
Remember me? I'm in a band now. It's called Roxy Music.
You know this thing about the 10,000 hours of experience?
Oh, yeah.
Get good at something. When we recorded Arnold Lane, we'd done about 50 hours.
The Rockonteurs podcast with Gary Kemp and Guy Pratt.
So, hello, Nick.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Very welcome.
And we're in Oxford, and was quite amazed to find it's a very long time since you've played here.
Yes, certainly. That's true of almost everywhere we're going on this tour, actually.
Yeah, where was it? 60s, I guess, as you last played here or something.
Yeah, because there's a great name involved with the last time you played here. You were with?
With?
Well, no, it was Pink Floyd and...
You mentioned it on the bus.
Did I? Oh, I might need some help here.
Yes, it was Herbert Groins and the Night-Timers.
No, it was Herbie Goins and the Night-Timers.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Herbie Goins.
Okay, which indicates that we were with the Brian Morrison agency, and what the agents would do is try and book a whole bunch of their acts rather than one. So they'd give a price for not only Pink Floyd, but in our case, I think T-Rex, Herbie Goins.
Rex, it would have been at that point, I presume. Yeah.
And, Ainsley Dunbar.
Oh, right.
The Ainsley Dunbar Retaliation.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, Ainsley Dunbar ended up playing drums with David Bowie, because I saw them at the Marquee.
Actually, not only that, he also ended up playing drums for Frank Zappa.
Ah, right. And he's still around, I think, isn't he, Ainsley?
I'm not sure, but I thought he certainly was a few years ago. I came across him, and he actually sent me some stuff he'd been working on. It sounded great.
But you always went out in those days with a bunch of people, wasn't it?
Not always. It was just particularly if it was something like a May Ball.
Is that what this was?
Well, who knows? But it could very well have been.
Games for May. And so that was with Sid.
Yeah, it would have been.
Yeah. And but when it was those sort of package toury type things, does that mean you would have been doing 20 minutes or something as a set? Or?
Yeah, maybe a little bit longer. I mean, the only time really we did a package tour was the Jimi Hendrix tour in late '67, Christmas, and over the Christmas period. The May Balls, you'd probably do a full set. You'd do an hour or something, because the thing ran from 8 o'clock until 3 in the morning or 2 in the morning or something.
And you couldn't have done a UFO type set, could you? I'm presuming you wouldn't do like a 15-minute interstellar overdrive, or
well, you could actually. I mean, the the punters probably wouldn't have liked it, but no, it was. I think we probably would have done. It wouldn't have been quite as lengthy as a UFO type of thing, but we were booked to be what we were.
Yeah, but because I suppose there was a maturing in rock and roll at that point. Because it wasn't like just before then with the Beatles. You would have been on with a comedian, Ken Dodd or something. I mean, Floyd managed to avoid.
Yeah, we did manage to avoid Ken Dodd. You're right. No, you're quite right. The first show I ever saw when I was a schoolboy was Tommy Steele, and actually, as you say, he was on with a contortionist and a God knows what else. It was musical.
But
really.
Even then, there was still, okay, we've crossed over from that area of showbiz, but even for Pink Floyd, for what you were doing with the sort of, I'm wondering what the other acts on these sort of packages would have made of you, because you're pretty radical compared to Herbert Goins and the Nighttimers, I dare say.
They were probably a bit puzzled and probably a little bit, in some cases disapproving, because everyone, we were all still hoping to get on top of the pops, all of us, whether it was the Move or the Herd or us or whoever. So we definitely had a bit of a problem, because we had a couple of records. We had Arnold Lane, then we had See Emily Play, and we were still doing the top ranked ballrooms. So the punters generally hated it.
Right. Do you feel like you've come full circle, Nick? You're back here doing some of that same early material now.
Oh, there are moments. I've had some incredible flashbacks to what it was like. But I have to say, what's so great is that now the audience is on side. We were sometimes playing to some pretty disapproving audiences. And the story of the music industry, it really was that we were saved by the whole business of student entertainment.
Right. The end
because
sections.
all those universities suddenly realised that they could rent these bands in. The social sec would make money, and the social secs were people like Harvey Goldsmith and Richard Branson.
I was going to say, because those are the people who actually went on. The music business was essentially shaped by sort of university social secretaries, wasn't it? Everyone from like the people who started Chrysalis Records to, as you say, Harvey Goldsmith, Richard Branson. So it's you're right. That's basically what shaped the world we live in.
Yeah, no, it's very different. And I still shudder at some of the top rank gigs, because they'd have the revolving stage, and we had quite a lot of equipment, so it sort of looked like I don't know, Pompeii. The sort of collapse of Pompeii. Thing
not Pink Floyd of Pompeii, just Pompeii.
Just Pompeii.
Your equipment's quite famous.
The equipment would be tottering.
Because you had it all spread out, didn't you, on the back of an album cover? What was it, Atom Heart?
Oh, yeah.
That came from a magazine spread. And I remember saying, because these things used to be a big thing in the colour supplements, didn't they?
Yeah.
Wasn't it something, I think it was a Phantom, an F4 with its payload all laid out?
That's right. It was, I think, out of Life magazine.
I mean, the thing that's different, when you watch old films of bands, isn't really the fact that the bands are much younger. We guess that. But when they pan to the audience and you realise there's nobody over 30 in the audience, probably no one over 25 in the audience, it was a revolution. That's what you were part of.
Yeah, well, I think music was much more, 50 years ago. It was the rebellion. It was something that was solely for young people, and there was the whole thing of most of us assumed we'd be lucky to get 2 years of it and then have to go back and carry on doing something else.
That is the thing, isn't it? Because having always worked with people who are sort of that bit older than me, everyone was doing something, getting to a point in their life for the first time. There'd never been anyone who did that. Like we were talking about this a while ago. I remember when Mick Jagger turned 30. No one had ever turned 30.
Yeah.
What was he going to do? Is he going to retire? Is it, you know, that's the thing. You know, do you get a mortgage? I mean, do you think about sending children to school? What do you do? It's because, as you said, I mean, everyone was looking at 2 years, weren't you?
Yeah. No, it's.
I mean, did you think you'd be doing it for the rest of your life?
It's very bizarre because it was absolutely assumed that this was ephemeral, and now all my friends who went into banking or whatever have retired.
I mean, let's just talk about this tour, because I mean, part of what I love about you, Nick, is you have great humility, and you humbly ride the bus with all of us. You do overnighters. I mean, it's been a difficult time. You know, all our crew have been on hold. I mean, did you ever think that this would happen? Was there a time when you thought I might not be doing this anymore? You know?
Yeah, I did. I think you know, when we went into lockdown in 2020 or 2021, and by then we were sort of cancelling the second attempt at an American tour or whatever. You just thought, well, maybe it's just not going to be possible to go out and play live anymore.
You don't mind travelling in this style, cutting your cloth to suit these kind of venues?
It's much more than that. I do it because I love doing it. You know, sounds a bit show busy, but
no. But I'm wondering if there's an element, because obviously because the touring I did with you in the past, Nick, was always, you know, they weren't tours, they were campaigns. No, I mean, do you know what I mean? There are hundreds of people. It's literally like D-Day level organisation, and yes, there's intense luxury that goes with that and everything, but I'm wondering if there must be something quite nice about coming back to remembering what it is, which is showbiz. You know, this is theatres full of people. It's so much more human.
Yeah, I mean, of course, one misses some of the, you know, the odd charter jet, and I have to say, when I went to the O2 a week or so ago to see Genesis, which was great, but driving in and seeing that fleet of giant trucks, I did think, oh, I remember all that. That was nice. But actually, to get back in,
well, that's all catering anyway.
Yeah.
But let's just talk about that, because you know you were part of all of this guy, and you said it was like how did you describe it? A campaign, yes, because that was a huge jump for Floyd, wasn't it? You know, going into that ended after Roger left, and doing that '87 tour, because everyone had thought, you know, that maybe Floyd wasn't going to be able to be as successful without Roger. Just give us a little sort of snapshot of family on the road and how you, because I mean you were with your kids as well, weren't you?
Well, not the not 94 so much as 94, not 87.
94. Your first lot were around.
Yes, but for less time. I mean,
did it take you by surprise that you could go out and do a tour that was?
Yeah, I mean, we knew there was a risk factor. I mean, the big thing was that I hocked my car to fund the whole setup of the thing.
Did you?
Well, I certainly put it up later on. Yeah, later on, I was talking to Michael Cole about it, and he said, "Yeah, that was a funny one." That he said, I remember talking to the bank manager and saying, more recently, and saying about this business of putting the car up as collateral, and the bank manager said, "Yeah, I never really got that." He said, "It was Pink Floyd. It was fine."
Because Pink Floyd never actually used to do big tour. I mean, you paid huge places, but you didn't do big tour. I mean, in fact, you know, the Wall tour famously lost money because you just didn't do it. So the tour was incredibly ambitious in its scope, in that, yes, it was a huge show, but there were hundreds of them as well.
Yeah, and that was completely new to me, to us, because we'd always done these sort of funny 3-week tours, and if we did more than that, we'd probably have a break for a month and then do another 3, and which was a terrible way of working, because the first week you spent sort of more or less getting the show working properly. Because we never, I don't remember doing production rehearsals until we more or less got to the gig. And so it was a completely new way of working. And I have to say, I absolutely loved it, because for the first time we got things right instead of just getting through them. Because the problem with the 3-week tour, as I say, first week learning, second week really sort of settling into it, third week getting ready to go home.
And why was The Wall so short? Why was it cut so...
Because it was wildly expensive to put on, and we'd have just gone on spending on it. And the idea was to get on with making the movie and generally sort of developing it in other ways rather than taking it on a big tour.
Yeah, there's an irony about Floyd having such a big entourage and touring in the way they did in 87 and 94, in that they were always seen as being quite, humble, shoegazing at times, almost musicians. There wasn't, but of course, and then you brought this Herbert in, who's a proud guy who was dancing all over the stage.
David had never seen me live. He didn't know that I jumped about, and so probably rather regretted it once they first saw me on stage. But I know, like, for instance, Scott Page, the sax player, was hard, but who is a fantastic sax player. Obviously, that played a big part. But it was, David said, partly he did want people who were going to, and same with Gary Wallace, who wanted people who were going to bring some visual attention. Also, there was a thing in terms of personalities that before you just been easily to be this sort of amorphous thing that is Pink Floyd, but because Roger was out forging his own career, it was like you suddenly had to make personalities of yourselves to some extent to differentiate between these two things.
Yes, though I think what happened was we ended up with the Floyd themselves remaining static, with all these people gambling about in the shape of I mean, whatever you did was minor compared to what Gary and Gary Wallace.
Yeah. But I think, unlike the Stones, which are probably the touring equivalent at the time, you were much more. I think you were trying to create an art piece as well, weren't you?
Yeah, as I think I said earlier, that business of we didn't want film of us on stage, and frankly, however much jumping about there would be, when the size of auditoriums we were playing, you'd hardly see that compared to giant inflatables or the big round screen with the film on it, and the lights doing all sorts of trickery.
Were there films of the musicians?
No, never.
No.
The only thing as well, there was a couple of synced things. I say at the beginning of Dogs of War, there was a great bit of film where it rushes up to a pre-filmed thing of David, and he turns to the camera and says "Dogs of War." And there was a thing that was never used, which was you in one of these days, where Nick said, I don't know if that wasn't actually your house, it was some incredibly sumptuous, sort of very loose Jason King type apartment, and there's like, and you go to answer the door, and you open the door, and it's you as a tramp, and he says, "One of these days, I'm going to cut you into little pieces." And it was
yes,
never
you're
used.
right,
and it was fantastic.
Well, we have an opportunity now, don't we? I mean,
get that. We'd have to. We've got screens.
God knows.
But no,
where
I'm
it
interested
is.
in also what I was trying to allude to earlier is it was a big commitment for you and your family, because you've always been a bit of a home guy and you're certainly a family man. I know you as that, and suddenly you were saying, "Well, we'll pack your bags. We've gone for a year." Or I mean, was that terrifying?
No, I think it was an adventure.
And it
wasn't terrifying.
But it's worth pointing out that it was a school year. It was literally, there was 4 weeks for Christmas, 4 weeks for Easter, and then 8 weeks in summer. It was literally like being back at school.
Oh, you weren't on the road the whole time?
No. No, it was a school year. It was like 3 terms.
Well, we took time off. For, it was sort of organised so that, for instance, we had to ship by sea all the equipment from Australia, Japan, or one of those sort of things. So, or get back to Europe or whatever. So there'd be these breaks in the system.
Look, I'm sure you want to be careful about what you say, but was it? Obviously, you've recorded the album and without Roger, but suddenly you're on the road without Roger. Did that that must have put a lot of pressure on David. Did you feel? Did it feel strange for you?
Yeah, but, a bit. But as I say, the whole thing was so different to what we'd done in the past. It wasn't as though some items had changed. Everything had changed, and the whole the way we operated as a band was completely different to the way we'd worked before, because we had all these extra musos on board, which was fun, and it was wildly different to the Four Lovable Mop Tops.
And I would say, yeah, obviously, because I'm sure, one doesn't want to say too much, but I feel the mood was perhaps lighter than it might have been with other people around in the pub. And there was very much a feeling amongst us, sort of the youngsters, the hired hands, of this sort of common purpose of you taking us on to do this enormous thing, and we all just wanted to make it work for you. There was there really was a kind of all for one for all feeling about it.
Well, let me turn to you, Guy, because now this is me interviewing you briefly. But what a responsibility! What were you terrified? First of all, I want to know how you got the audition and what that was like, and then how terrifying was it to feel that you had to play Money and these incredible
that
pieces.
Sort of thing didn't really come. The audition came up. I was just in David's orbit. I was just sort of, I kept getting closer. He kept turning up, like I played for the Dream Academy, who he produced, and we did a gig supporting him. And then I had this Nick Laird Clues, this excruciating meeting. I was introduced to David, and I couldn't say anything, and David doesn't say anything unless he needs to. So we both just stood there until one of us had to walk away, and him, being the ranking officer, chose to walk away first. And it was
there's a surprise.
Yeah, and it was just the most excruciating meeting of my life. But then, I just kept. Then I was working with Brian Ferry, and he kept turning up to play on that. And and it was just. And then he asked me to play on an Amnesty International gig with him, with Kate Bush. And of course, I was in Thailand on holiday when that happened. It was just one of those things. And there were two things when I turned up in Toronto. There were two absolutely conflicting emotions. When I met these guys properly for the first time, I had this absolute feeling of being at home. I felt so comfortable with it. I thought, this is my music, these are my people. And turns out I was right.
And you'd done all your homework, obviously.
I'd done all my homework. But the other thing that went absolutely with that was, you're getting sent home. There's no way you can do it. This is ridiculous. You can't play for Pink Floyd. I remember we arrived at Toronto. We all flew. It was me, Gary Wallace, and Tim Rennick. We flew in together, and I remember there was a limo for us. Right? I remember a limo, and I'd just been on my first ever business class long haul flight. Then put in a limo, and we drove to the hotel, and we drove past the CNE Stadium, which is one of the first gigs we had. We were doing 3 nights at the CNE Stadium in Toronto. And I remember as we drove past, and Gary Wallace went, "Oh, look at that, we're playing there in 6 weeks." And I remember just thinking, I'm not.
Right.
I'm not. There's no way that
hand was going to come on your shoulder and say, "I'm sorry, it's been a terrible mistake."
Yeah, absolutely. Total imposter. I mean, beyond imposter. So it was absolutely fixed in my head that I wasn't going to do it. That's all I could say.
But Nick, how was it for you as well? Because you'd been playing with Roger, and suddenly you've got this. I mean, when did you feel that this was a rhythm section?
Oh, I think really early on, because of course they were actually really good. All these people that had been chosen. I think I would say David carried most of it on his shoulders. For him, he did a hell of a job actually, in terms of
singing everything,
making it happen, and being the front man, right. Really.
But I remember we were only like about 10 days from the end of rehearsals, and we really didn't have a show. None of us knew what to do about it. So remember when Bob Ezrin was called in to sort of produce, they say produced by, the word is director, and he was because Bob's an incredibly theatrical character anyway. And
he produced The Wall, right?
Yeah, he produced the Wall albums and everything. And he produced the Momentary Lapse of Reason album. Yeah. And he's amazing. But he comes from theatre. And he came in and was very much a theatre director. There was lots of pointing and shouting. I mean, I loved it.
What was he telling you to do?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. But he stood on...
But there was a focal point. I remember, at one point, he did actually say, said, "Okay, if anyone's lost at any point stuck, just look at Guy. Guy knows what's going on." And I remember thinking, I really don't.
Depends what time of the day it was.
Yeah.
But what did he add, Bob Ezrin? Did he create the arc of the show, which is
Well, I can't honestly remember now.
I think it was more just the fear that we open in 2 weeks is what he brought to the show.
Yeah.
And how different was the one you did in '94? Was that
similar? There were quite a lot of the same people. Again, but we were a bit more savvy about the show. I mean, to be honest, we got one thing wrong, in my opinion, which was that we decided that it would be a really good thing to make more of David, Rick, and myself. To remind ourselves that this was Pink Floyd. Which was a good idea, but it would have been a good idea if we'd actually discussed it and told the rest of the band what was happening. So suddenly there was a whole change of, well, actually we're going to go on and take a bow, just the three of us, and then we'll do a bigger thing. I just think we didn't manage it very well in terms of hearts and minds.
The difference with the '94 tour was that the job had already been done. This was Pink Floyd. This was accepted as Pink Floyd. Also, just made Division Bell, which is a fantastic Floyd album by any metric.
Yeah.
It's got high hopes. It's got one of the all-time great Pink Floyd songs on it. So I think there was a sort of certitude and a more relaxed thing. It wasn't the sort of jumping up and down party hooray thing. There was tension in other areas, which I think is what made it better.
Mm-hmm.
Because to play Pink Floyd music convincingly, you can't be too happy.
Guy, what makes Nick, and what makes him so Pink Floyd? And how did you recognise that?
I used to recognise it in the rehearsals back in '87. I remember I used to have it, and I remember saying this to someone was that. Because Nick was very, very involved in the setting up of the tour and everything, but with all the logistics and stuff. So there'll be times he wasn't. So there's a lot of time we'd be cracking on rehearsing without him, and Gary would be playing the drums instead of Nick. And I remember saying that, and because Gary is a perfect musician, he's perfect. He's like us. He's an '80s boy.
Gary Wallace, yeah.
Gary Wallace grew up with machines, and his timing is perfect. He's an absolutely faultless musician. But I couldn't hear the 150 million records. There was something about... there was an interesting thing. There's where Nick... And actually, it's this band has made me more aware of it than I ever have been in the past. It's just this ridiculous swing and place that Nick sits, which is just... you can't quantify and you can't... And I now realise, I've got to say, on the last time the Saucers were out, all these big-name drummers coming and just, worshipping at Nick's feet, just going, oh, my God, man. And I kind of understand what that thing is way more than I did before. Because I'd never played with Nick Blow, the only thing I'd say, it was very important to have that second drummer, because there's all sorts of stuff, especially the newer stuff, that needed, all that backup and all the machine stuff. But I think for you as a player, it was the worst thing that ever happened to you, was having a net. This is the first band I've ever been in where we, it's just you and me.
Yeah.
And it's the best thing it's the best I've ever known playing with you.
Nick, how did you feel about the fact that there wasn't another one after '94 that people sort of went their own way?
Disappointed, because one of the annoying things about being a drummer is it's not something you do on your own. You do require a band.
Hello.
And the bass player as well. Yeah. Well, yeah. McCartney makes a few solo albums, but if you're not a singer, but yeah. I know.
Yeah, but it's not just him sitting there with a Hofner.
No, but I know what you're saying. So, did you try? Did you ever get to pick up the phone and say, "Come on, David, let's try and make another album"?
No, I didn't, because there would be, I think, I'm trying to remember now, but it's not something where people are going to go, oh yeah, okay then. I think it was, David didn't want to go out again.
Because it had been so big, these two massive tours, that it was like, do you know what, I just want an ordinary life.
There was an element of that, I think, probably, for me for a while anyway. But I think it's one of those things where you just have to wait and see if whether David actually wanted to go out again.
But because the thing is, a lot of it's to do with the responsibility. And I don't know, because, and there are some people who thrive, absolutely, like Mick Jagger clearly thrives on that level of responsibility. Roger Waters thrives on that level, that thing of basically, because you're going from sitting at home to being the chairman of Coca-Cola. There are thousands of people depending on you. There's incredible...
It's a small city, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And
you use the analogy of the army, and it's, one day you're catering, the next they're going, General, can you invade Sicily or whatever?
But, I mean, how did you feel with that level of responsibility? Is that something that sits easily with you?
I'm more... which goes with the drumming, more of a team player, I suppose.
On this tour, we're doing Echoes, obviously, so it's the Echoes tour. When was the last time you played it live? Did you do it on any of those tours? Did you do it?
Oh, yes, we did it at the but we did it, apparently, and I can't remember us ever actually playing it, but apparently we did it for like 5 shows.
I have no memory of that whatsoever.
No, neither do I. Apparently there's recordings and everything.
I'm sure there are people out there who know.
Oh no, there
in
are
great detail.
That's it. Yes.
But what do you? Can I just ask about the recording of that track? Because Okay, he rolls his eyes. I don't think he knows. He's forgotten.
No, you do know Nick's spoken about it very eloquently in the past.
But you decided when you were making this album to make one track expand across the entire second side of the album, 25 minutes long. How did it come? Whose idea was that initially? Had you any idea? And how it came together? Was it these sections?
Yes, it was done in sections, and then there was a point at which it was decided to make full side of a vinyl record, and at that point, that's when those sort of repetitive pieces came in. But I really can't remember exactly who decided what to do when.
You never sat down and recorded it all in one. It was recorded in sections, and then and then
I'm sure
together.
It was recorded in sections, and whether we even lifted some of the elements of the sort of repeats. The thing about the track. And we all sat at home, we all learnt it in lockdown. We knew we were going to approach it, and we all met together in the studio, and we put it, in the rehearsal rooms, and we put it together. But it's very difficult to get this sort of feel of it, and I think we've got there now. I hope we have. But there was this soulful kind of slowness about it that really is so Floyd, isn't it?
Well, what's interesting is you probably realise at the time is that now when you look back, it's absolutely the template for what was to become Imperial Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon and everything. So.
Yeah. And then, but when we got together and played, I think we were all nervous, weren't we?
We're very nervous. I mean, there's a slightly sort of awkward thing for me because obviously the last time I played it was on David's tour in 2006, and it was a stand. I mean, it's going to be the standout thing in any show, If it's not a song that can play second fiddle to anything, and it was because Rick was on that tour. There was a very, very big deal made of it, and it was incredibly magical and wonderful to see David and Rick playing together. And then when Rick died, David said, "I'm never going to play that song again." And so I said, "I'm never going to play that song again," which seemed like a very obvious thing to say because who else was I ever going to play it with than David? So,
and this was your father-in-law that passed away.
Rick was my father-in-law. So, but it was an easy thing to say, and I genuinely meant it because I never thought. I mean, this is why you never say never.
But I'd like. I know a little bit about that story, and I think our version is the emphasis is different.
It's completely different.
First of all the Floyd wrote it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's actually something I wanted to bring up.
But the thing is I know that one of the key moments live for David and Rick was this was the Space Jam moment, which was a kind of conversation between the two of them musically, guitar and Hammond. I think that comes out. That's given less emphasis in our version, and the emphasis is now put on what I call the Doctor Who bit, right?
Yeah, and also, and in all fairness, it's got to be said for whatever the version we had with David and Rick, which was an amazing, very special thing. But I've never played it where it has the swing before, where it has the feel, the Nick. You know,
Because there's this whole
this is a
focus on
thing
Nick.
that no one. Yes, exactly. But this is a thing that, you know, and but you know, Stevie DeStanzalo is a fantastic drummer, but no one is Nick.
No, and you take that, you know, you have your big focal moment, which is kind of like a solo, as it were, when we're playing the Doctor Who.
Don't give away too much.
You know, but it's you. It is about you, and it's the same as on the record. You know, people can hear it on the record, but it's
Just talking about the sections, I know we never ever dreamt of trying to play it through in one pass. You know, whenever there's the sound of wind, it means there was a crossfade between sections. And I wondered, in fact, whether we just actually lifted that whole, you know, the three sections of after the verse and chorus, whether we repeated, just copied it and stuck it on the end.
How do you feel about playing it now, Nick? Or are you still counting the bars, as it were? We all are. We're all trying to be. We're all technically involved. I mean, I think we're all waiting for that moment where we can just forget about it and play it.
Enjoying it, because it's not difficult. You just have to remember the part, but it's not like. I'm trying to think of something that is.
No, you're right. It's basically
difficult.
As a piece, it's incredibly imposing and seems different, but it's actually four quite simple songs.
Yeah.
For me, it's
but
utterly...
maybe you shouldn't give that away either.
No, it's utterly orgasmic for me when after the piano intro and the guitar intro and suddenly your toms come in. Because I am taken straight back to being that kid who put that vinyl on and that slow tom-tom fill that goes into...
it's
the opening of the song.
That's what I said. It's definitive. That's definitive Nick Mason. It's some of the first, I would say, definitive of David's solo style. It's kind of one of the first times you really heard that. Other than that album, I would say, is the first time.
Yeah,
that's where David becomes fully formed.
And I think for me and Lee, it's been quite a take on. You know that we know that on all the other songs we can kind of make it up as we go along, and we can make it ourselves. Yeah. And there was a sense in this that we had to lean a lot more to the sort of what David had done on Medal. So it's a massive tour ahead of us, isn't there? I mean, I think we're doing the UK for a month, and then we're in Europe for 9 weeks.
No, is it 9 weeks? Yeah, something like that.
Unfortunately, and I have to say this because this
should be mainly Eastern Europe.
Yeah, but Guy, this actually leads me on to something I want to ask both of you now, because obviously, sadly as well, because there are plenty of people who would have loved to have seen us in Moscow and St. Petersburg. I think we were meant to be playing. Yeah. We've cancelled. You guys recently got together and became Pink Floyd again with David and made this incredible record. Could you just take me through, Nick, of what you know about how you were asked?
I got a call from David. That's quite a rare event, and he explained very roughly what he wanted to do, and I was a little cagey about because time was short. You know, we were about to head off on this particular trip, and there was something else that I was doing at the same time, which is some sound effects for something, which needed to be finished for an opening. And I said, oh, well, yeah. But in principle, it would have been truly dreadful to have turned down that opportunity.
And did you think it was a David solo record at the time, or did you know?
Yeah, no, I thought maybe he was doing it as a solo piece, but I'd be very happy to play on it. And then once he sent me a demo, a sort of rough version of it, and I thought, oh yeah, well I can do this.
Did you play along in your studio at home?
I just
turn up on the day,
more or less tapped my.
Who brought all the gear down for you, or was it David's drum?
No, Dave organised that.
Okay, and what about you, Guy?
Well, I'm just finding I've got a text here, which I got, and it was quite. So I was actually in Manchester. It was my son Stanley's 20th birthday, and I was having dinner with him. And I got this text saying, "Hi Guy, are you busy in the next few days? And is Nick M around at the moment? I want to record a song for Ukraine." And it was literally 15 days after that it came out.
And 2 days after that, it was number one in how many countries?
Yeah, 29.
So what was it like turning up and recording? How was because you had Nitin Sawhney was on it as well.
Nitin Sawhney, yeah, turned up on the. I'd gone round there for dinner the Saturday night before, and so David had played with his original idea for it, and we're still messing around with like lengths and stuff like that, and it was fantastic. So in fact, I put a rough bass on it then, so in the hope that David would tell me all the things he didn't like that I was doing, so I could get that out of the way. But it was fine, and then I just sat at home learning it for days, and then. Yeah, on the day I remember even that video you see is when it was recorded.
So did you have the guy singing his piece while you were in your headphones?
On the headphones.
And I remember getting there and sort of still wasn't actually sure that you'd turn up. I remember I'm just suddenly thinking he might change his mind. I mean, please don't.
I had a conversation with Dave because it's a very, from the drums point of view, relative simple. But
it's you.
But it's me. And then I'd said maybe we could have a breakdown in it.
Yeah,
for
that
the
was
fills.
Absolutely inspired.
And Dave said, "Yeah, that's a good idea."
I'd say Guy phoned me and he said, "It sounds like Floyd. It's more Floyd than Floyd."
Yeah.
And he was very excited.
I was very excited. Well, Sarah Lee, who was taking pictures on the day, she said, "Oh my God, the pictures I've got of you." She said, "You look like the kid whose parents have just got back together."
But you know what? The reason it sounds like Floyd, and I have to say, I mean, because we've heard David solo albums a lot. We all love David's guitar, and we know that. But it's this man here, right?
Yeah, it is. It's the way the drums sit, you know.
And yeah, I mean, and it is a joy playing with you, Nick, because you have. Ritardando is a musical term, isn't it? Where you kind of pull and push the timing of a track.
Yeah.
My son, who's doing a degree in music, is going to obviously correct me on this, but that sort of ebb and flow that you put, rather than modern drummers who have grown up on machines.
Yeah, well, there's also a very interesting idea that American drummers play on or even fractionally ahead, and English drumming always tends to be pulling back.
But you do that exception, and I wonder where that comes from. Was it ever a conscious thing?
No, but it's interesting that possibly my favourite rock drummer of all time is Mitch Mitchell, and Mitch definitely does a sort of he holds it back a lot.
Well, I think it's actually, I've only really noticed this since we've had this band going, but I think I've found the secret to your timing, which is that I think you actually count in half the time everyone else does. So you give yourself this enormous space between beats, which is why you can slip between times.
Where we're all going 1, 2, 3, 4.
And he's going 1, 2,
right,
3.
Right.
So what happens between that 1 and 2 is completely up for grabs.
Nick, thank you for doing this with us.
Yeah, brilliant.
I think it's time for us to go to catering. But
the call of catering.
But it's, I mean, I just want to say, to your face, what a thrill it is to be on the road with you. You created certainly things in my life that have inspired me forever musically, and I still go back to. And to actually be up on stage playing some of those tracks, wow. And you've had that in spades, haven't you, guys?
In spades. Oh, and it's just wonderful. It's just so great to be back finally doing this. It's brilliant.
It is. We are going to try and keep this going, aren't we?
We are, yes. We are going to try, yeah.
For those of you followers who are worried. So we do have people lined up, and Ben, our producer, is going to find us on days off and try and connect us with other musicians. And we do have some good names coming up. That I know, and we're just going to keep doing this.
We're going to keep doing this, but now we know the songs.
Yeah, we've got a bit more. We can relax a bit more. Exactly. But thank you for listening. I want to thank Steve, who's our out front guy, front of house
engineer, who's amazing engineer, and we're about to find out just how good a recording engineer he is.
He's sitting there terrified in case none of it came out. And I'm keeping our fingers crossed that we will be here next week.
Well, hopefully it will be next week, yes.
Thank you for listening.
Good night from him.
And it's good night from all of us here.